Hi, this is Peter. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Cane Pole. This weekend I was asked, how do you know what bait to use? Which I gave a really simple answer to, but I think that subject needs to be talked about a little bit more with beginning anglers and with beginning anglers in mind. The answer I gave was you can use worms pretty much anywhere in South Carolina and you'll catch something. I didn't say you would catch specific fish. Some fish definitely do better with live minnows. Some fish do better with. Dog's got something that's chewing up. It's just a stuffy toy. Any rate, sometimes you do better with crickets. Just in general though, worms are good. But that doesn't actually answer the question. The question is, how do you know what bait to use? Well, what you're wanting is something that mimics something found or something that is found in the natural environment that a fish would normally eat. We're going to take artificials out the window right now because while they do work, it's a little bit different. You've got to select your artificial based on what you're trying to mimic, what you're trying to catch, and conditions. You've got various colors of artificial lures, and it's almost a science to figure that out. So we're going to keep it to natural baits. As I said, in general, you find marine worms, you find aquatic worms, worms near the water, worms that get washed in the water everywhere. Fish are very opportunistic, and when a worm gets washed in, something's going to take it, usually. That's salt or fresh water. There are marine worms in salt water. That being said, some fish, like largemouth bass, will also take worms, but they're more keyed in on taking smaller fish, smaller than they are fish in relative terms. You might be doing yourself a better favor using minnows for largemouth bass. But same token, crappie, or crappie, however you want to say it, you're more likely to catch them on minnows or, say, grass shrimp if you can find them and catch them, than you are worms or crickets. But even getting into brim, shell crackers prefer worms. Bluegills, on the other hand, are real big on crickets. They'll also take worms, and I have caught shell crackers on crickets, but they have more of a preference, shell crackers being more along the lines of going for worms, going for snails, stuff like that, and brim go for more aquatic insects. That's something I know by research, by personal experience. In order to know what bait to use, aside from a wealth of personal experience, you're going to have to do a little research on the species of fish you're trying to catch. It doesn't matter so much if you're out there trying to catch anything. I would just recommend everybody go out, get you a can of worms, dig you some worms, whatever, and you go rig up worms. You rig them up on bottom, you rig them under a bobber, you will catch something. It may not be this huge fish, but you're going to catch fish, and that's more what you're interested in as a new angler. But if you know what species of water is in a lake, or you're going catfishing per se, you may not want to put out some worms because you may have too many little brim, or in the case of the lake up here, white bass, and put that long, that just eat every bit of worm off your hook. You're probably going to want to go with some cut bait. All cut bait is it's a smaller fish. You can even use bigger pieces of fish, cut into small pieces, let juices out in the water and attract a fish, specifically catfish, in. Cut bait is also very good in salt water. In salt water, I would recommend you use a piece of shrimp. Everything out there will eat that. Now, once again, you're not out there after the big, huge pelagic fish trolling that these guys do, 400-pound marlins, stuff like that. It's not going to really eat a little tiny shrimp. But what you're going to catch off the beach, what you're going to catch in the creeks, they'll eat a shrimp. There again, some baits may be a little bit better. Like if you're shark fishing, you want a nice piece of fresh, bloody fish out there. Let's call it what it is, just like you would catfishing. But you need to know what your species that you're after eats. Most species of brim, worms or crickets. Bass, crappie. You're looking more at minnows because that's what they eat. Catfish, they'll eat just about anything. I've caught them on live little brim, live minnows. But you're wanting to use a cut bait, something to get some smell out in the water. They're not scavengers of rotten stuff, but fresh dead, they scavenge that up and eat that awful hard. In general, that's what we will experience in our area in South Carolina. You can look up other species of fish and learn more about them. I, for example, know very little about fishing for walleye, but I understand that they like minnows, they like a live bait like that. That's what I would start with. But you're going to have to do a little research, and there is a little science involved. If you are fishing 2 inches under the surface under a bobber, you're not likely to catch a fish that's hanging on bottom due to water conditions. By the same token, if I'm in a place and the fish are jumping and hitting on the surface at things, I'm not wanting to fish on bottom. Now, you could catch fish on bottom. It's just I'm going to decide what to use. And sometimes deciding what to use also determines what bait I'm going to use. I can take a bobber and a cricket on a hook, and I can throw it with enough weight on the bobber, I can throw it out, and that cricket will float along the surface. If I'm trying to catch something that's eating things off the surface, that's what I'm going to do. If I'm in the same circumstance, a worm will sink on a hook. Always does, but it doesn't sink very fast. So that's a good option. But if I'm trying to fish on or near the bottom, a lot of times I'm going to use a worm because that's what's found on or near the bottom. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to take a cricket, put a split shot on above it, and throw it out there, for certain species. Like I said, a lot of times you do better. Like in the Edstone River, I always take a can of worms with me. I'll take a couple hundred crickets if there's a couple of us fishing, and we'll run out of crickets at times. There's this little pond, a little lake in Florida that went with my grandnephew. I was trying worms, wife and he were using crickets. I ended up switching to crickets because that was what was working. And crickets around that area are at a premium price because of that same reason. I've rambled a little bit, I rambled on. Just know that selecting bait is easy if you know what you're fishing for. If you don't know what you're fishing for, it's still not too hard. Grab a can of worms, go fishing. It's just my thoughts on it, my 2 cents. Doesn't necessarily, have the views of anybody else. All right, after you see this video, or probably when this video gets published, I'll be up in the mountains trout fishing. I'm gonna try and shoot a little video up there, but I'm really going for the fishing, and the wife and I are going to be camping, and it's basically fishing, eating, and sleeping is the plan. If I don't get any videos out, I apologize, but I'm going to try and get some video footage and then sort it out for next week. Get it up next weekend. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.